Nvidia just delivered one of the largest profit jumps in Silicon Valley history, raising the question, are we witnessing the peak of a rational AI boom or the edge of a dangerous tech bubble? Then Lawrence Summers steps back from teaching at Harvard and sheds a string of elite roles as newly released Epstein emails trigger the most serious crisis of his public life. We'll look at the explosive revelations in the James Comey case, where Trump's own former White House lawyer says Pam Bondi and Lindsey Halligan should be disbarred. We'll dig into the Charlie Kirk purge, more than 600 Americans punished over social media posts that weren't necessarily violent or even threatening, just not sufficiently loyal. And finally, a new national poll gives Democrats their biggest lead over Republicans in 8 years, even as Gavin Newsom and other Democrats warn Trump may be laying the groundwork to undermine the 2026 and even 2028 elections. All that and more today here on Filtered. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Hi, and welcome. We'll start off as we always do, checking in on the market fundamentals from yesterday. S&P 500 closed at 6,642.16. That's up 0.38%. The NASDAQ Composite closed 22,564.23. That's up 0.59%. Always, please, always keep in mind the long term. Over the last 25 years, the S&P 500 has gone up on average 8.32% a year. The NASDAQ 100 has gone up on average 9.09% per year, but it doesn't mean it's going to go up every year or every day. This is the average. So if you're a long-term thinker, that is what I think you should be most interested in. Okay, let's dive into the top story of the day. This is a big one. Nvidia's AI profits. Wow, they were pretty impressive. I hate to sound like Larry David, but they really were. Nvidia's record haul and an AI bubble question. Nvidia, now valued above $5 trillion, just reported results that would make any CEO dizzy. According to the New York Times, profits last quarter hit $31.9 billion. That's up 65%, a whopping 65% from a year ago, on $57 billion in revenue, driven by its AI data center chips. The company still controls about 90% of the market and is telling Wall Street to expect $65 billion in sales next quarter. At the same time, Nvidia is plowing tens of billions into so-called circular deals with OpenAI and Anthropic, investing in them as they agree to buy more of its chips. That's causing a lot of people to say, is this completely kosher? So is there an AI bubble? In comparison, or in a companion Times column, the economist Mohammed El-Arian, very respected economist, calls it a potentially rational bubble. Many investors will get wiped out, he predicts, and many others have well. But the race could still leave society better off the way railroads and the internet did. So what's the real message here? Are we in an AI bubble? Yeah, we are. But it doesn't mean necessarily that Nvidia is going to crash. They could be the big winner. Microsoft, OpenAI could be the big winners. Other companies could lose, but society could be much richer, just as it was after electricity and railroads and automobiles. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. Now, there's no doubt people are nervous. I'm nervous because Nvidia is now so incredibly big that what would have happened if their sales had been down a little yesterday? Many fear that would have caused such a panic in the market because there's such a huge percentage of not just the US stock market, but the entire worldwide market. Nvidia, its market cap is bigger than the entire market cap of Germany's publicly traded companies. So they are huge, huge, huge. And you can have a sigh of relief after yesterday. But it does seem as though at some point, everybody has a down quarter. You have a down quarter. I have a down quarter, but we're not big publicly traded companies. So what is going to happen? There's no doubt there's going to be some retrenchment. There's no doubt we're going to get to a point where simply saying you're an AI company, you're going to get showered with this positive warm blanket of good feelings and investor cash. Those days will have to end at some point. Let's look at this in some historical context. In the United States alone, there were roughly 3,000 automobile companies that existed in the 20th century. Almost all of them went out of business. I mean, you had the big three after a few decades, and pretty much the rest of them, poof. So if you were an investor in an automobile company, and you invested in 10 companies thinking, well, 1 out of 10 will hit. Well, no, there's a good chance you lost your money in all 10 investments. Let's look at another industry, radio manufacturers. By 1930, there were 640 U.S. Radio manufacturers, radio networks, and players. Almost all of those brands disappeared. 90% of them vanished. So this has happened time and time again. Railroads, electricity, new technology comes in. It genuinely is breathtaking technology. Investors rush in. Entrepreneurs rush in. That's what you want in a free market capitalistic society. But it is inevitable that at some point there's retrenchment. At some point the bubble burst. It doesn't mean people were irrational to invest in that new technology. It just means most people picked the wrong horse to back. And that's that. If you bet on pets.com in 1998, you lost everything. If you bet on amazon.com, you became wildly wealthy. But you only know that after the fact. So is this the real deal? Is AI the real deal? I happen to be in the camp that, yes, it is. It is going to change society. And in the short term and the medium term, I do think it's going to make society as a whole lot better off. Yes, I'm not Pollyannish about this. There are many, many things it could do to make things worse. Not to mention the fact that we have an entire generation of young people who are happy to sit on the couch and have relationships with digital clones and character AI, which may cause the extinction of our species. But putting that aside for a minute, I think in general, there's going to be a lot of advances in medical breakthroughs and new cures for diseases, things that can eliminate back-breaking, painful, dangerous work that will be a huge, huge boon to society. Long term, could it bring out extinction? It absolutely could. I'm very optimistic short term and medium term. I'm not optimistic that all of the companies publicly traded in America today that have seen their valuations skyrocket and that are seeing price to earnings ratios that are absurd by historical standards, that they're all going to do well. No, I am not. So what are we to do if we have a lot of our stock, not necessarily in Nvidia, but if you own stock in technology companies and you're sitting back and thinking, wow, my 401k is really growing. My net worth is growing, but it seems too good to be true. It seems too easy. Well, it might be. The only guidance I can give you, and this is not a financial investment advice, I am not your financial advisor, but I'm here to analyze major stories of the day and to try to fit it in through the filter of communication and personal development. Beware of hubris. Your net worth today might be higher than it's ever been. It is for a lot of people. That doesn't define your worth. It doesn't mean you're going to have that for tomorrow. The only hedge that I can see that I try to practice every day when it comes to my own personal finances, yes, invest. I invest in the market. I try to add holdings every single month. I only do low-cost index funds. You can do what you do. But the only real hedge is to continue learning new hard skills, Continue trying to be in the marketplace, giving value to others so you have income at any age. Ted Danson, as we talked about yesterday, age 77, he's still making a gazillion TV shows and making tons of money. That's one hedge. If you always have income, then if your stocks go down, it's not going to matter. The other thing is live within your means. Use debt in as limited a way as possible. Use debt in very strategic purposes, for very strategic purposes, and in ways where if all of a sudden your stocks went to zero, you wouldn't have to change your lifestyle. I think that's really the only solution for how to deal with sort of the mental angst of worrying about, is the market going to crash? Is the market going to crash? Live within your means, continue to have income, continue to build real skills where you can make money in the current economy and live off that. So if your investments go belly up, you'll be okay. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks for joining me today. This is Filtered. This is your daily dive into the top 5 business stories, technology stories, and culture stories of the day, filtered through the lens of communication and personal development skills, all with the goal of making you more successful in your personal life as well as your professional life. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill, and it's trainable. Welcome back to Filtered. Lawrence Summers and the Epstein fallout. Larry Summers, Epstein, and the limits of a comeback. According to the Times, former Harvard president and Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers is stepping back from teaching while Harvard investigates his long-running ties to Jeffrey Epstein. He's also giving up his role running Harvard's Massavar Rami Center and has resigned from the OpenAI board, as well as positions at the Center for American Progress and the Center for Global Development. The Times reports that newly released emails show Epstein calling himself Mr. Summers' wingman, even years after Epstein's conviction, and advising him on a romantic pursuit of a mentee. Summers told students he had issued, quote, a statement of regret expressing my shame, and later said he is, quote, deeply ashamed and takes full responsibility for my misguided decision to continue communicating with Mr. Epstein. Now, Second Times profile notes that this is only the latest in a career of scandals Summers has managed to survive. This time, many institutions are moving first. Okay, what's the real message here? Finally, here's a scandal unveiling in the way scandals are supposed to happen in America. A guy is caught doing sleazy, skeevy things, and he's actually honest. He says, I apologize, I'm embarrassed. He's acting like a real human being, and he's being punished for it. We don't see people saying, well, good for you, and that'll show them, that'll show how tough you are. You're not caving in. No, he's actually taking punishment. He is getting canned from every kind of job opportunity he has, board of directors, prestige. We're not going to see him writing op-eds in the New York Times anytime soon. This is how a decent society works. Someone is caught doing something that really thumbs its nose at contemporary morals and standards, and they're punished, and they're taking their punishment. Refreshing. Let's go a little deeper here. I haven't seen that many people really commenting on the contrast of this with a certain other someone who's very much enmeshed with at the Epstein scandal. But this is very much the norm. This is how politics used to work. This is how um, business leaders used to act. They're caught doing something that they know was wrong, that they know makes them look horrible. And they actually say, yes, shame. He brought, I have to congratulate Larry Summers. He actually endorses the idea that someone powerful and rich in our society can display shame. Because whether it's Musk or Trump or a whole host of other characters we've seen in recent years dominating the headlines, the concept of shame seems to be so last century. That's like talking about owning an outhouse. It's become uh, seen as something so trite. So I want to congratulate Larry Summers for admitting he's actually capable of shame. Doesn't mean he should be idolized, but he is retreating. He's not fighting and saying, well, I'm going to fight Harvard. I demand to teach these students. No, he thought he could continue teaching students, even though he stepped down from other boards and other high profile positions, wildly lucrative positions with hedge funds. He stepped down from all of that, but figured, hey, I'm in the middle of the semester. I might as well finish out the semester. And then he realized after a day, no, even that's too much. Now, let me point out that as far as we know, Larry Summers has not been accused of any crime. There have been no reportings of him with young girls doing illegal things. His crime is knowing that long after Epstein was a convicted sex offender, that he continued to want to communicate with him, pal around with him, get advice with him, call him his wingman, and to get advice from Jeffrey Epstein on how to, what it sounds like, seduce a woman he is some kind of a professional relationship with or is a mentor to. I mean, it was not a teenage girl, to be clear. This was some woman of professional status. And Larry Summers is married, by the way. Now, I'm not judging anyone else's marriage. No one really knows what goes on between two married people and what their deal was, but it looks unseemly. And he knows it looks unseemly. And that's why he is not fighting essentially his cancellation, his firings. He's being pushed off the national stage and the international stage. So Larry Summers is a true major intellectual force and public intellectual of the 20th and the 21st secretaries of the 21st centuries. He has been a big deal, a Bigfoot for a long, long time. Maybe he was the Secretary of the Treasury way back in the 90s. He was president of Harvard. He's written tons of books. He speaks everywhere. This is a nonstop energizer bunny of ideas. Now, you could argue a lot of them are bad ideas. Okay, that's a subject for another matter, another day. But you can't deny the fact that he's been a huge intellectual force, political force, institutional force, educational force in the country. And right now, he's being canceled. Will that stay? I think there's a good chance. I mean, he's now, what, about 70 years old. He's fabulously wealthy. And there's nothing preventing him from writing books. Will he be showcased on every major platform or TV show after this scandal? Maybe, maybe not. I do think it's profoundly interesting that this, and I'm not defending him, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve every one of these punishments. I think he does. I'm glad to see it. I do find it odd that he's not really accused of committing any crime. He's accused of associating with a felon. Meanwhile, we have every other so-called respected business leader in America, from Mark Zuckerberg to Elon Musk to Jeff Bezos, knowingly associating and hanging out and palling around with a convicted felon who happens to live at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And somehow that's okay. Everyone seems to forget that we have a convicted felon living there, and we have someone who's been convicted and found guilty of sexual abuse of E. Jean Carroll. But somehow that's perfectly fine. So to me, there's a bizarre dichotomy here of one person, entire career ruined for associating with a felon, a sex felon. Other people can, on an ongoing, and I think the punishment is justified for Larry Summers. But on the other hand, you've got people every day willing to associate with other certain felons, and nobody seems to even mention it anymore. So there's a real erosion of standards of how we hold people accountable in the United States that I think I and others find troubling. And I do see it as a good sign that the treatment of Larry Summers is in some ways kind of a return to normalcy. Remember normalcy? Remember when things were normal? Remember when we didn't just laugh at someone being convicted of felonies? Remember when there was a time when you just couldn't be someone held in public esteem and say anyone who disagreed with you was a liar or a pig? Those are the normal days. And maybe, just maybe, what we're seeing here with Lawrence Summers is creeping back to normalcy. We will see. Let's take your comments. And those of you watching live and viewing live, you can always comment right here, and I try to respond to as many comments as possible. If you're watching this on demand, please leave comments on any platform you're on, and I read the comments, and I typically try to respond to as many as possible. This just comes in from @Sabel. As an engineer, AI is definitely a useful tool for coding prototypes or self-learning something. I think Sabel is talking about our previous story about, again, the surge of demand for the products of Nvidia and how they beat expectations and the entire market breathed a sigh of relief. It's certainly, I think AI, the beauty of AI is it helps people basically on anything and everything. I use it constantly. I used it to help write scripts today. Now, I'm not having AI tell me what to say right now. For those of you new to the show, I have sort of a news summary that I've pulled from major reputable news organizations that have real human being journalists. Typically, I reference stories from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Associated Press, places like that. And then I plug that into ChatGPT and say, give me a quick, concise 160-word summary so I can set up the story for you so that you and I can have a conversation. So yeah, Sabel, I agree with you. It's very helpful. Kathleen writes in, impeach Trump today. I'm living proof. Kathleen Novak, he ordered me to be silent and wanted me dead. So I don't know the particulars there, Kathleen. I'm sorry if you have been on the receiving end of extremism and terrorism. And perhaps if you'd like to elaborate more, happy to hear from you. I'm TJ Walker. We have a lot more stories to come. This next one, fascinating story about what the former White House counsel in the Trump administration says should be happening to our current Attorney General. All that and more in just a moment. Want to communicate like a pro? Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Millions have already transformed their speaking skills. Why not you? This show doesn't run on a lot of corporate sponsorships or big media backing. It runs on caffeine and your support. If you like what you're hearing and want to say thanks, you can buy me a coffee. Really. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. It's quick, it's easy, and yes, it helps cover editing, hosting, and staying relatively ad-free for as long as possible. Buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. Your $3.95 makes a real difference. Want live coaching from me? Bonus episodes? Full course access? It's all waiting at tjwalker.com/members. Join now. We are back. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks for joining me. Ty Cobb, Comey, and calls for disbarment. Trump's own lawyer says disbar them in the Comey case. Former Trump White House counsel Ty Cobb is now blasting Donald Trump's own legal team over the botched prosecution of James Comey, the former head of the FBI. According to the New York Times and reporting from MS Now, Cobb says Attorney General Pam Bondi and U.S. Attorney Lindsey Halligan should be, get this, disbarred after Halligan admitted the full grand jury never saw the final indictment that they supposedly signed and approved. Quote, "This is an indictment that doesn't really exist," Cobb said. "It was never properly returned." Shocking. Never occurred before in American jurisprudence, he told Chris Jansing. "I do think that both Halligan and Bondi should be disbarred," adding that Bondi lied or is equally incompetent, but more likely she lied. Again, this is not according to some liberal pundit or a Democratic activist. This is according to Trump's own legal counsel in the White House from his first term. Judge Michael Nachmanoff pressed Halligan in open court and even asked whether she was a puppet for Trump. This is a federal judge. If prosecutors knowingly filed an indictment the grand jury never voted on, legal experts say this is not just misconduct. It could be grounds for criminal charges and even prison time. Okay, what's the real message here? When Donald Trump's own legal counsel, his own White House counsel from the first term says Pam Bondi and this prosecutor Halligan should be disbarred, it's time to wake up. This is no longer normal politics, normal jurisprudence. This is a sign that there are real problems going on in this Justice Department. And maybe the answer is disbarment of the Attorney General and this prosecutor. Maybe it's actually prison time for them. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. This is troubling at many levels. First of all, a little context. So Donald Trump said, Comey has criticized me. I don't like Comey. Therefore, he must be a criminal. I don't know what crimes he's committed, but if someone criticizes me, they are, by definition, a radical, dangerous extremist, a threat to me, and therefore a threat to the nation. This is essentially what he's saying. No serious person disagrees with that. I'm sorry. That's the theory. And then, so he then instructed the Department of Justice to find some context to prosecute James Comey, which I have to add, President Trump would never be president if it hadn't been for James Comey doing him a solid back in 2016 and sliming Hillary a week before the election. So it's so perverse at so many levels with this, everything related to James Comey. So Trump instructed the Department of Justice and told Bondi in a tweet or a truth tweet that you got to go after him. You start indicting these clowns, essentially were his words. And so they instructed various prosecutors in various regions around the country. These were quite often career prosecutors, many of them apolitical, nonpartisan, or even Republican, and they all said, no. There's no justification. There are no facts to warrant indicting James Comey or finding him guilty of some crime. And so they resigned, were fired, were kicked out, and finally they went through everyone. There was no one left. And then Donald Trump said, oh, there's this super hot woman I see on TV. And she has a law degree, apparently, from somewhere. And she's done insurance claims before. She seems to like me and do what I want. Let's take this person who doesn't have a single day of prosecutorial experience and have her prosecute Comey. And that's exactly what happened. This Lindsey Halligan character, I must point out, again, speaking factually here, she had more days of experience attending and participating in beauty pageants than she did ever prosecuting a single crime. That's because she had 0 days actually prosecuting crimes and a lot of days on the beauty pageant circuit. And this apparently was the main credential that Trump has. You look good on TV, you're willing to do what I say. That's it, you're hired. So she was given this task, and apparently she's the most wildly incompetent attorney in the history of the Department of Justice, according to many. What's getting her in hot water now is she gave a signed indictment to the judge to start this whole indictment process. And when asked yesterday, did the grand jury even see this particular indictment? No, unprecedented. It is, according to many, just absolute out and out fraud. And that is why, again, it's not me. It's not a Democrat. It's not a liberal. It's not Bernie Sanders. It's not AOC saying these things. It is Ty Cobb, the Republican conservative legal expert who was Donald Trump's own chief legal counsel at the White House, is saying Pam Bondi, Lindsey Halligan should be disbarred for the out and out fraudulent, illegal things they are doing in particular in this Comey case, but there are other things as well. Now, it does look like this judge, if he doesn't simply dismiss the case, will laugh at it and dismiss it and issue some withering criticisms to the Department of Justice for how they've handled this. He does not seem amused at all. Let's look at some more of the facts of this case, because I have to stress, Halligan, no prior criminal trial experience ever. She rushed the case to a grand jury within 4 days of being given the position. So not a lot of thought, extra research, not a lot of time late at night in the legal library researching and contemplating things. It was just, let me do what the boss says. Now, a part of the Comey defense is it is illegal to be convicted or to be charged with any crime in America because of a political vendetta. Now, a lot of people say this all the time, and judges ignore it. But in this case, there is documented evidence because of written statements from the administration and spoken things from interviews. Trump is on record again and again and again. I don't like this guy. He's a bum because he disagrees with me, and I want my Department of Justice to get him. That doesn't work in a constitutional democracy. That is simply not how things are done in societies that are governed by the rule of law. That is how things are done in Putin's dictatorship. It's how things are done in China. It's how things are done in Hungary, in Turkey. It's done all the time in authoritarian dictatorship. It's not done in America, but it's being tried. People are trying to do it here, but there is thankfully still some pushback. Let's go to the comments. Chaz writes in, removal of the entire administration is necessary. Well, Chaz, that doesn't happen in a democracy without elections. We'll be talking about changes in mood, recent polling data on who's likely to take over the House of Representatives in 2026 and what might happen in 2028. as well as concerns, legitimate concerns from many voices that there won't necessarily be free and fair elections in the United States in 2026 or 2028, which means there will be no removal of this administration. Is it too late? I'm optimistic enough to think that no, there can still be a functioning democracy, that the ship can right itself. But I could be wrong. What do you think? Post your comments now. Back in a moment. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. The Charlie Kirk Purge and Right-Wing Wokeism. The Charlie Kirk Purge and the new right-wing wokeism is here. According to major Reuters investigation, the United States is witnessing a new and far more dangerous form of cancel culture, and it's coming from the right. After the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, which I abhor and everyone abhors, more than 600 Americans were fired, suspended, or investigated for social media posts that did not, may I repeat, did not call for violence. Their only crime was failing to celebrate a MAGA icon. Now, one of these people was South Carolina kindergarten assistant Lauren Vaughn. Her post simply quoted Charlie Kirk's own words from 2023. I will quote those right now. Quote, this is from Charlie Kirk. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. This is a prudent deal. It is rational. End of quote. And those are words directly spoken by Charlie Kirk. She then added 2 words, thoughts and prayers. She was fired days later. Or Clemson climate scientist Joshua Breggy, who wrote, no one should be gunned down. But am I going to allow people to make a martyr out of a flawed human being whose rhetoric caused notable damage? Not a chance. Republican lawmakers threatened to defund the university unless he was removed. He was fired. And Trump's Vice President, J.D. Vance, encouraged these purges directly. Call them out, and hell, call their employer. This isn't protecting anyone. It's enforcing ideological obedience, and it's erasing the First Amendment in real time. Okay, what's the real message here? Amongst all the other constitutional crises facing America right now, we're really facing a time of right-wing wokeism permeating not just academia, but businesses everywhere. 600 Americans have had their lives destroyed, their careers ruined, not because they called for violence, but because they didn't praise Charlie Kirk. This is an Orwellian nightmare, and it needs to stop. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. So, am I saying you should be able to say anything you want anytime? Well, no. No one believes you should be able to shout fire in a crowded movie theater because it can cause a stampede and people die. No one says you should be able to out foreign agents working for your country because revealing their status as an agent could get them instantly killed in a foreign country. So there's really nobody, no serious person who believes that there should be absolutely zero restraints on speech. You should not be able to take something that is a pure poison and sell it as a drug that will cure baldness and start selling it to people and killing it to people. You don't have the right to commit fraud like that. So everyone agrees there should be some limits on speech. Traditionally, the limits were you can't make calls for violence. But that's not what happened with these people getting fired for Charlie Kirk. They're getting fired because they hurt the feelings of people who like Charlie Kirk. Now, if you like Charlie Kirk, fine. I'm not trying to convince you not to. If you mourned his death, I respect your mourning. If you're personal friends with him and you wanted to express sympathies to family, by all means do so. But when a public figure dies and someone who has been involved in the political debates of our time, and by his own reckoning is highly, highly controversial and very much a part of culture wars, when that person dies, it's simply implausible to suggest that no one be able to criticize this person. And I don't wish anyone ill will, but if Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson were to die tomorrow, I don't think anyone should be fired for voicing criticisms of things they said throughout their career. In fact, I think it's kind of weird if people didn't. I've got some issues with both of them. I think Tawana Brawley is something that Al Sharpton's never really lived down, although in the context of our times, that seems like nothing as far as how public figures lie repeatedly. But this is a huge, huge problem where we've heard all of this talk about how awful wokeism is in our culture today. And some presidential candidates, like the governor of Florida, that was their whole theme of, I'm going to fight wokeism and I'm going to make wokeism die. Well, wokeism is stronger than ever, but it's not because there's some left-wing faculty member of an Ivy League university getting you or a family member of yours fired because you didn't use the word Latina. Or Latinx. That's not what is happening. You aren't getting fired because you didn't use a preferred pronoun of some obscure academic at the University of Iowa. That's not happening. What is happening is, the latest count, according to Reuters, 600 people have seen their careers, their livelihoods, their incomes destroyed because they didn't praise an ideological extremist. And that, my friends, is not America. Let's take some of your comments. Okay, we've had a number of comments coming in. Do the facts? Oh, I missed a couple here. And wow, so many comments have come in today. I'm really glad to see you joining me. And if you are new to the show, thanks so much. We do this show live every day, and you see warts and all. And then it's also available on demand on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, X, Rumble, Blue Sky, you name it. We make this show available on every format and on every podcast platform. But those of you nice enough to join me live, if you have comments, we include those as well. Dina says, yet the Dems have stated and ran on hate Trump. Okay, I'm not quite sure what that's connected to. People are entitled to hate people, and certainly people of any political party generally don't like people of the other political party. I'm not quite sure what that's referencing. Danny says, $38 trillion debt, no agenda, just tax freedom for multi-billionaires with their scapegoat politician. Okay. Trust democratic progressive leadership, true American values for every citizen. Okay, so I have no problem with people saying, hey, vote Republican, vote Democrat. Let's try to give a few more reasons, because this is not a political talk show. I realize we have to talk about politics from time to time, but I'm here As a business communication, personal development expert, we look at top business stories, technology stories, as we did today, talking about Nvidia and other technology stories. And we filter these stories and cultural stories through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills. FST says, do the facts found in the indictment now become irrelevant and relieve Comey of the action he has? So I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not giving legal advice. The problem is when seasoned prosecutor after seasoned prosecutor in the Department of Justice looked at the facts, they all concluded there were no facts that would that any reasonable jury or judge would ever convict Comey on. And if you want to say perjury, that's a tricky one to convict someone of, because if you ask anyone enough questions, you can always say, well, the answer here contradicted what was said here. So you can always allege anybody committed perjury, but it's very hard to prove. So if it's thrown out, is it possible that this Department of Justice tries to go after Comey on something? Anything's possible with these folks, but it wouldn't be normal. How many people were fired for not taking the experimental jab? Okay, so we have an anti-vaxxer amongst us. We're not going to start that today. Well, the Second Amendment is not going anywhere. Don't know anyone who suggested it would. It's the First Amendment we were talking about, your freedom of speech. Let's call it a ghost in the machine rights. Let's call it conservative purge culture. I think people will know that's bad. Yeah, I think that's an excellent word for it. And to be fair, because I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist, have there been examples in the last 5-8 years where people did see their careers harmed because they didn't use a proper pronoun, because they referred to Caitlyn Jenner by a previous name? Did they get attacked in a way that seemed like left-wing woke? Sure. Again, I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist. I'm calling it out as I see it. But yeah, I think conservative purge culture is a fair characterization of what we are seeing now. Susie Not Sorry says the MAGA will end up on the wrong side of history. A very sad time for the U.S. now. Diet Coke Dude says, good point, particularly considering how many are deifying and martyring Kirk. Again, I want to be very clear. If you happen to love Charlie Kirk and you think he's wonderful, you have the right to feel that. You know, I've had friends before who had a big picture of Chairman Mao in their bedroom because they thought he was cool and didn't really stop to think about, gosh, his actions basically caused tens of millions of people to die. His policies, according to most historians and political scientists, can be directly attributed to tens of millions of people dying. It's why I don't have a picture of Chairman Mao in my home or in my office. But people should have a right to do that. I mean, you can have a right to idolize Che Guevara or Fidel Castro if you want, not people I would admire, but you have that right. I want to thank you for your comments, and please realize if you're watching this on demand, I will read your comments and try to give you my sincere take if you have any questions. And if you catch me stating something wrong factually, call me out. If you disagree with me, that's okay, but don't just name call or say I'm wrong. State your version of the facts or where you think things are skewed in a way that have somehow distorted reality, and we can have an honest conversation about it. I'm TJ Walker. There's more to come. Some big changes of public opinion going on right now that we'll be talking about. Stay tuned. Want to communicate like a pro? Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Millions have already transformed their speaking skills. why not you? This show doesn't run on a lot of corporate sponsorships or big media backing. It runs on caffeine and your support. If you like what you're hearing and want to say thanks, you can buy me a coffee. Really. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. It's quick, it's easy, and yes, it helps cover editing, hosting, and staying relatively ad-free for as long as possible. Buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. Your $3.95 makes a real difference. Want live coaching from me? Bonus episodes? Full course access? It's all waiting at tjwalker.com/members. Join now. Welcome back. I'm TJ Walker. Democrats' polling surge and fears for 2026, 2028. Democrats surge in polls right now and warn of threats to elections themselves. Democrats just opened their biggest polling lead over Republicans in 8 years. Now, this is according to a recent poll. It's from PBS NPR Marist, the University of Upstate New York. It's a Marist survey. 55% of voters say they would choose a Democrat for Congress today. And I have to emphasize today. The election is a long way off. That's compared with 41% who would back a Republican. That's a 14-point gap, the largest since 2017. Independents break down even harder. 61% to 28%, giving Democrats a stunning plus 33% advantage among independents. Trump's approval rating has fallen to minus 17%. And his party has lost a string of high-profile races from New York to Virginia. But these numbers are landing at the same moment prominent Democrats are sounding alarms about Trump's federal deployment into blue cities. California Governor Gavin Newsom argues the administration is creating a pretext to undermine the 2026 vote, saying, quote, "This is a pattern. This is a practice. Trump's efforts to rig the midterm election continue to this day." He's even warned, "I fear that we may not have an election in 2028 unless we wake up to the code red." Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says Trump's use of federal agents look like, quote, "testing the limits" ahead of the midterms, while Senator Chris Murphy argues Trump is signaling that allies who manipulate elections or use violence will be protected. A massive Democratic polling surge paired with unprecedented fears that fundamental democratic procedures could be warped sets up 2026 as a political test like no other. Okay, what's the real message here? The Democratic brand is still seen as nah by most voters, but the Republican brand is seen as even worse. Right now, we're seeing the polls show that voters, average voters in America, favor voting for the Democrats in 2026 by a whopping 14%. Among independents, it's 33% more for the Democrats than the Republicans. But before the Democrats start celebrating and popping the champagne corks, they need to listen to certain leaders like Gavin Newsom who say there might not even be an election. What Trump is doing, sending in troops to only Democratic-led cities, could be a sign of exactly what he's planning on doing for the elections. If you just send in troops in every Democratic precinct, maybe no Democrat has the urge to vote in 2026. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. I do think that if you're being honest and fair and objective, as I try to be here, this is good news for the Democrats because for so long, the polling data said that after stock market crashes, after all of the tariff taxes, after all the unconstitutional activities, polls were showing as recently as a month or so ago that most voters said if they had to do the election over again from 2024, they would still vote for Trump. They were no longer thinking about, or they were not yet thinking about that they'd made a bad choice. It would appear now that many Americans are really having second thoughts on what they're getting. And again, don't listen to liberals or Democrats. You know who they voted for. But increasingly, you're seeing it from all of these conservative broadcasters who are constantly saying things like, I didn't vote for a big tariff tax. I voted for smaller government, cutting out waste. I thought this was the guy against foreign entanglements and giving our money away. He was going to be the guy to keep money here, and he's giving it to places like Argentina and to anything Netanyahu wants. So there's real disenchantment among a lot of people who consider themselves MAGA supporters, as well as people who consider themselves independents who, for whatever reason, didn't like the Democratic nominee last time. Right now, and I have to stress, it's not particularly meaningful for two reasons. One, there's so much time between now and election day in 2026. Two, everyone, I believe everyone, although perhaps not Gavin Newsom, is underestimating the things this administration will do to find votes. Remember, find me 11,000 votes, Mr. Secretary of State in Georgia. I think they're underestimating what this administration is willing to do to find votes or to eliminate votes, either by counting certain ways or having rioters mob the election facilities, as they did in Miami in the year 2000, to stop vote counts if it looks like a Democrat might come ahead. There's so many ways, if you're willing to use the power of the state to sort of just cheat a little, just change the lines a little, just nudge a little here and there. There's so many ways where it could affect the entire outcome. Because let's not forget, there's only a handful of votes separating the Democratic versus the Republican representation in the U.S. Congress today. The Republicans only have a handful majority. It's slim, it's slight. So just changing a couple of votes per precinct, adding a few here, taking a few away there, could make the entire difference between another 2 years where Republican has give a rubber stamp approval to anything Trump wants, versus the U.S. House having nonstop impeachment hearings. Now, you may say, well, I don't want nonstop impeachment hearings. You're going to have to pick your poison. Do you want more of what we've had the last 11 months? For some of you, the answer is yes. For others, if you want any kind of return to normalcy, the answer is no. You may have to find an alternative. What do you think? I would love to hear from you. Here are some more facts. Trump's approval rating has dropped to 39% with 56% disapproval. I will say this about Trump. Yeah, I'm here as an honest, fair broker of information and ideas. His polling, to me, is more consistent than any politician I've followed in my lifetime. And I've been following politics pretty closely since the 1970s. You hear about his polling data soaring and going up, and it seems like it's at 43%. You hear about his polling tanking, going down, 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 and it's quite often 42, 41%, as it still is in some polls. The lowest I've seen in the last month is 37%. So he basically has 4 out of 10 Americans who loved him in 2016, who loved him in 2020, and who loved him in 2024. And now, to me, the bizarre and amazing thing, the resiliency of Trump, is how little public opinion has changed over time. Having said all that, we talked about it yesterday on the show. The ground does seem to be shifting. This Epstein thing, I'm not saying it's going to destroy him, but there are cracks in the foundation that we've never seen before. The fact that some of his staunchest cheerleaders, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, felt unencumbered at opposing him and felt they had to speak out, and how that spread. It went from really Congressman Massey, who has been a vocal critic. He's a conservative Republican, but he's been a vocal critic of Trump for a long time. That's not that significant. But when you see a Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Lauren Boebert say, we're parting with Trump on that, and then you see things cascading out of control for Trump, where now we have this laughable situation where he's like trying to he's acting like it was his idea to release the Epstein files when he could have done it the first 5 minutes he was sworn into office, but he didn't. He does look scared for the first time. He does act guilty. Now, I will say this about Trump. Again, I'm fair. He is a gifted communicator. He is a world-class television performer. I mean, that's his real strength. Those of you who actually followed his business career know that he's had bankruptcy after bankruptcy. The one area where he's been, and the only area where he's been wildly successful in life, it's not airlines, it's not USFL football teams, it's not Trump steaks, it's not Bibles, it's not Trump vodka. The one area where he's legitimately been very successful is playing a character on TV and communicating something that's interesting to people. He's been really good at that and being able to shape the message he wants. He's really good at it. And all of his normal magic is not working on this Epstein thing. For the first time, really in his life, he's acting guilty. And he's acting like he looks guilty. We've never seen that before. He's always acted like, I'm loving this. E. Jean Carroll, bring it on. Grab them by, whatever. Yeah, I'm proud of my locker talk. He's always acted proud of his transgressions. You want to take me to court and charge me with felonies? Great. People will be talking about me. He's always addressed all these issues head on, put his own spin on things and attacked, and he's not doing it with this Epstein thing. Now, is his Department of Justice going to release documents that implicate him in crimes and sexual assaults, even if they existed? I don't think so. But it's very hard to keep these things in once stuff starts coming out. So we are in a new era where, again, I'm not predicting that this finally is the thing that destroys Donald Trump. I'm not predicting that. But of all the crises I've seen hit his career, including felony convictions, this one is the first one I've seen that seems to really be shaking the confidence of his core base. That's what's different. And that's why we got to take this seriously. Okay, that concludes our main stories of the show. We got to cover a couple of grab bag issues today. Miss Universe judges walk out, according to the New York Times. The Miss Universe pageant is in an open meltdown, just days before the crown is awarded in Bangkok. 2 judges have quit. One of them, the Lebanese-French composer Omar Harfash, says the whole thing is a charade and rigged, with a secret impromptu jury allegedly deciding who makes the final 30 behind the official panel's back. This comes right after a co-owner publicly berated Miss Mexico, sparking a mini walkout by contestants. When even a beauty pageant looks this opaque and bullying, it's no wonder audiences are tuning out. Okay, I do have to share with you some of my own personal experiences with the Miss Universe organization and all these beauty pageants, because I've been called in to train various Miss Universes and Miss Teen USA and beauty pageants around the world on media training and public speaking training, because it is legitimately an area where young women get to really be in the spotlight and speak more. They do have a huge platform. So that is my involvement. I've also been a judge of beauty pageants, not the Miss Universe one, but I've been a judge in beauty pageants as well. And I'm not one who says, wow, they're the best thing ever. And I'm not one who says it's the worst abomination ever and they should be abolished and everyone should be ashamed. I don't have that extremist a position. Having said all that, I think maybe it's time to say, all right, Beauty pageants had their day. They had a nice run, but is it really relevant today? Part of it is it used to be. I remember when I was a kid, my whole family would sometimes watch Miss America or Miss USA contest. It was on TV, and we just watched it as a family. It wasn't any big deal, but it was something on. It was a part of pop culture. These days are different. If you want to look at somebody pretty, or if you want to look at a young woman in a bathing suit, you don't have to wait once a year for a contest on a TV show. It's called 10 billion options on your cell phone every second of the day. So the whole purpose of, I mean, let's be honest, it's kind of an excuse for people to look at attractive young women. Let's be honest about it, okay? Yeah, there's a talent competition and mission and all that, but it's really based on how can we monetize the fact that people are interested in looking at attractive young women. That's what beauty pageants are about. These allegations that it's all sort of a charade, that it's rigged. Let me be careful here. I don't have evidence that it is, but I will share with you a few anecdotes because once when and I won't say which one, I want to protect her anonymity. Once when I was coaching media training and public speaking training at Miss Universe, she had just won the week before. And she was telling me that she'd had no experience in pageants, never done anything like it before. It was kind of a fluke. Her friends signed her up. And before she knew it, she'd won. I said, well, how did you win? She very sheepishly looked down at the ground and in an embarrassed manner said, I guess Donald Trump thought I was hot. I kid you not. That's what she told me. I didn't think that much of it at the time. But based on what we now know about his behavior, about young, attractive, tall, good-looking women, it makes me think a lot of other things might have been. Again, I'm not making any allegations, but it did seem bizarre. And I definitely got the sense that back, and he no longer owns it. I definitely get the sense that back when he owned it, he could say, that's the winner. And the judges were there for show. Additionally, and forgive me if this seems like I am bragging. It's just a part of what I have done. In addition to training beauty pageant contestants and doing media training for them, I have been a judge several times at beauty pageant contest. And I do get the sense that they are rigged for political reasons, sponsorship reasons. I remember one case in particular where I was a judge, and the person who won was not anybody's idea of someone who would be in the top three. When I asked other judges, did you vote for her? No. No one knew a single judge who voted for not just someone who came in the top three, but who won the whole thing. So I do tend to think that these organizations and these events attract a lot of characters, shall we say. And the fact that the judges are walking out, they're having a harder time getting major TV networks to carry them. It may be time to just say, all right, beauty pageants, you had a good run. It's time to just quietly go away. Our final grab bag issue of the day. This is a little bit bizarre, but in the context of what's going on in the world, maybe not really. Franco nostalgia and the fight for memory. In Spain, the far right is trying to turn a dictator into a lifestyle brand. On the 50th anniversary of Francisco Franco's death, a new poll shows about 20% of Spanish youth view his dictatorship positively. Young Vox supporters in Madrid tell the New York Times that everyone lived better under Franco and praised him for roads, housing, even family values. The left-leaning government currently in power is pushing back with a year-long Spain in Freedom campaign, from school comics to a planned Franco-era escape room, and even a game app where players try to kill democracy. The real battle here is over historical amnesia, whether Europe's younger voters will forget what authoritarianism actually was. This is bizarre. Now, those of you my age or older will well remember the gag line on Saturday Night Live, where Chevy Chase would say, and this just in, Francisco Franco's still dead. I mean, he was a very famous dictator. I happen to have extended, I guess you'd say, former family members who lived under his regime. And anybody who lived under it does not want to go back. It's just not fun living under a dictatorship. Now, has everything been wonderful and perfect with Spain being a part of the euro and a part of the European Union? No, it hasn't. But compared to the repression going on under Francisco Franco, I don't think any sane person would want to go back. I'm happy to see this centrist and left of center incumbent party in democracy taking this issue seriously, because what we have seen around the world is people in favor of sort of centrist democracy, mixed economies, where most of the economy is in the private sector and you have a social net. They're horrible at actually selling that idea. Basic concepts of liberal democracy isn't sexy as far left or far right. And people who believe in democracy, little d democracy, have got to be more aggressive at selling the idea of checks and balances, mainstream, and there being a free flow of ideas and candidates running and winning and losing elections and changing power. A few more facts in. They are doing things like media training. Great. They haven't hired me, but that's great. They're doing podcasts, comics, all to educate people about how bad dictatorships were. Now, there's an unresolved legacy of mass graves, unpunished repression because of Franco, and it needs to be talked about. Okay, I'll be back in just a moment. We're going to close out, as we always do these days, with questions from you about things not related to what's in the news. So back in just a moment. This will be a brief commercial break. Like what you heard? Don't let the algorithm bury us. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess. Want direct access to me live? Want to unlock bonus episodes, behind the scenes takes, and full access to my premium courses? Then become a member today. Just go to tjwalker.com/members and choose your preferred platform, YouTube, Patreon, whatever works for you. This isn't just another subscription. It's a full access pass to the tools, coaching, and content that can transform your communication and career. tjwalker.com/members. I'll see you inside. Welcome back to Question Time. Every day at the end of the show, I take a question from you about something that doesn't directly tie into the news. We all need a break from the news from time to time. So I take questions here that relate to communication skills and personal development skills. That's my forte. So this question comes from Catalina Simone, and she is a student in the Complete Storytelling course for speaking and presenting. The question is, how can storytelling make a PowerPoint presentation more memorable and impactful? Okay, I'm very happy to hear this question, because many people have the idea of, oh, I can give an interesting presentation and tell stories, or I can give a PowerPoint. If I have a PowerPoint, I can't tell any stories because I'm handcuffed and I have to sit here and read bullet points off the screen. Meanwhile, I know everybody is bored to death or they're checking their phones, but hey, it's a PowerPoint and I have to do it. Well, I'm here to tell you, no, you don't. The first big thing I would stress to you, Catalina, is to tell yourself one thing. There is no such thing as a PowerPoint presentation. Let me say that again. Some of you are thinking, well, what did TJ say? Is he crazy? Has he lost his mind? No. What I'm telling you is there is no such thing as a PowerPoint presentation. There is no such thing as a technical presentation. There is no such thing as a financial presentation. There is no such thing as a formal presentation. What do I mean by that? What I really mean is there are only two types of presentations. It's either interesting or boring from the audience's perspective. Nobody's ever said, wow, I really am glad this person gave me a great PowerPoint presentation. No, they're thinking, hey, that was interesting and useful. I'm glad I heard that. Or they're thinking, my God, TJ's so boring. He should have just emailed that. We all could have stayed at home. So the first thing you really have to realize, if it's your job to give a speech, a presentation, a talk, a briefing, is you have to focus on the real goal. The goal is not the technology. PowerPoint is just one of many technologies you can use. Your real goal is to figure out, what are you trying to help the audience do? What sort of action do you want them to take? Then what messages will make them likely to do that? Then what story do you have to make that message come alive? Then and only then should you use PowerPoint to enhance that message. Now, the rule of thumb I use with all of my clients, and I understand you're going to think this is crazy, don't put text on a PowerPoint. Use images. Use one image per slide to make the idea more memorable. So you should start by explaining your point with no slide up. You should then tell a story where there's no slide up and people are listening to you because it's interesting and useful and relevant to them. Then and only then do you put up a slide with an image that further drives home your message. I understand that's not how it's done in your culture or your company or in your organization. It is what works, however. If you have lots and lots of facts or numbers, email it to people in advance. Give it as a handout. Don't put it up on a slide. It's boring and not effective. I'm TJ Walker. I want to thank you for joining me today. This has been another edition of Filtered. We're still a relatively new show. We're about 2.5 months old. We're new on all podcasting platforms. If you got any value out of this, please subscribe to the show or follow the show. Different podcasting platforms use different terms. Apparently, iTunes and others said, gosh, if we use the word subscribe, people think they're going to be charged. So people are less likely to do it. So they switched from a subscribe button to follow. Sounds like less of a commitment. And the truth is, you don't have to pay me anything for this show. So hit follow or subscribe. If you really like the show, please tell a friend, pass it on, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you're watching on TikTok or any other platform, thank you for doing so. Please subscribe, follow, like it, leave a comment, and you can always come over to my YouTube page, which is kind of the video home base for the show, even though we're on all other platforms, and leave a comment on my post section, my community. I would love to hear from you. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.